Hello and welcome into the Sporting Pod, along with Mauricio Ruiz and live on location, well, live as we record this, probably not live as you're listening to it, Tony Allegretti, who is at SoccerX in Miami. Coming up today on the pod, changes coming on and off the pitch in the USL Championship, how next year will look different in the league, plus a closer look at the best 11 from this season, and that live check-in in Miami with Tony. We are fed by the Bearded Pig, locally owned and operated with locations in San Marco and Jax Beach. Make sure you swing by the Bearded Pig for great barbecue and great times.
Nothing from Miami?
No Miami's oinks?
I totally just oinked.
Okay, we didn't hear you. So sorry.
Zoom must not like the oink.
You know what? We may have put the barnyard filter on it on this Zoom, so we may not be hearing it. All right. Well, as mentioned, Tony is at SoccerX in Miami. This is an event. Mauricio, did you go last year?
I did not, no.
Yeah, I went last year, and it is a massive sort of soccer industry convention with everything from, teams having technical conversations, agents are there, you have vendors who supply things from everything from pop-up goals to broadcast setups to stadium technology, ticketing, what have you. It's a huge thing. Tony, give me a sense of what you're seeing down there and what the benefit is for you to be down there as one of the representatives of Sporting Jacks.
So thank you. It's this is probably like my third or fourth SoccerX. It's always a little bit different. Last year was in a convention center in Wynwood, which is really just a big kind of warehouse. This year, it's completely different. It's in a kind of very tech and cooled environment at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino, which is also a little weird because, on the walk up, you can smell cigarette smoke. So it's there's always some twist. And the other things that are just a little bit different this year is a tremendous focus on the women's game, more than I've ever seen it. In fact, at 11, I'm going to duck in Amanda Vandervoort and Kim Shelton from Lexington and Christina Uncle from Tampa Bay are on a panel called A League of Their Own. So really excited to Super League fever has definitely caught on here, but so obviously has the NWSL. There's been a ton of NWSL content. The other things that I thought have been interesting, it's very MLS and Euro sort of centric. La Liga always has a big sort of VIP lounge, and there's a lot of hospitality from the European leagues. But this year, there's a lot of Liga MX as well. Club America's here and some panelists. So all together, really, really fascinating. But I'll have to say the headline is the women's game and just the explosion of it.
Tony,
yeah, go ahead.
No,
sorry.
I was going to ask. As you're mentioning, there's typically a lot of European influence and just different agents and different people. I mean, we're coming up close to the transfer window here, the winter transfer window. Do you see or can you partake that there's some of those conversations happening and
yes.
People kind of in the corner having a little bit of a quiet conversation, because that typically happen around those environments. They use that opportunity for that.
There's definitely some deals happening. In fact, there was one or two yesterday that we sort of were adjacent to that were really interesting. I better not get myself in trouble, but yeah, that's happening. And the networking on the commercial side is just massive. So I mean, I'm sitting outside right now at the casino, and there's probably 40 tables with people deal making and networking. They all enjoyed my snort, which you didn't hear. So it's kind of a bummer. But yeah, that's absolutely happening. So another SoccerX, another good one.
All right. Well, there are a number of different things that are going on down there, as you mentioned, and it runs a couple of days down there at the big Guitar Hotel, the Hard Rock there in South Florida. From a conversation standpoint, when you're having conversations with others down there, has the conversation around Sporting Jacks changed over the last couple of years when you've attended?
Yeah, definitely in awareness. And a lot of people have a lot of details on stuff that we're doing. So that's definitely changed. I'd also say just the league in general, the USL, and the sort of opportunity for growth. It's not really the same anywhere else in the United States ecosystem right now. I think there's a lot of attention, be it sort of, from the sporting side, with partnerships, and also from the, sort of investment side. We're seeing a lot and hearing a lot of deals. Just met Peter, who's the guy that brought Santa Barbara, their championship team, and they're really stoked. They got a beautiful stadium right on the beach. Unbelievable. Can't wait to go to away days in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, by the way, that segues us very well into the next kind of topic here that we want to get into, and that is the changes in the USL Championship for the next couple of years. You mentioned Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara Sky now has been transferred the franchise rights from Memphis 901. The target date for Santa Barbara to begin play in USL Championship is 2026. Memphis had a hard time getting a stadium deal done. And as we have seen and as we have learned in the past, it is so important to have your own stadium. You could do this temporary thing in the short term like Rhode Island is doing. Mauricio, you've talked a lot about their transition, but you've got to have your own home. And so Memphis, which was a Western Conference team last year, by the way, is going to go away. So sadly, those soccer fans in Memphis will not have their team to root for. And Lexington moving up from League One next year. So that's going to replace Memphis in terms of the table in the short term. Still waiting to hear on things like what Brooklyn's plan is in terms of USL Championship team. Obviously, we know there's some progress being made here in Jacksonville, Buffalo at some point. So this league continues to grow, and in some regards,
Milwaukee,
Des Moines. Yeah. So the question is, what does this league look like in 5 years? If anybody wants to hazard a guess on this thing, 5 years seems like an eternity in terms of the way that this league is continuing to grow, Mauricio.
Yeah, and I think the common denominator, and Tony, you're probably if you're engaging in those conversations. But when I attend, Transfer Room last year, and I attended the convention in California, the conversation around the USL Championship and its growth is really around the opportunity for transfer of players and its flexibility and freedom that the USL provides on giving an opportunity to young players and some really kind of the mid-level, early 20 player that wants to make that move to the next level. And internationally, the USL is becoming that trampoline space for them where they're not getting locked up in a 3 to 5 year contract, but they're getting to play a high-level game, first-team professional football before to showcase and create some highlights. So that's where I see the growth of the USL in the next 5 years is becoming, and the value of players increasing and becoming a destination for international clubs.
Yeah, I feel like my table was just bugged because we were just having coffee this morning with Oliver Weiss at Orange County, and he's saying like literally the exact thing. And where the league is, it's really in a good position right now for a value for clubs all over the world, not just Europe, but it's a USL Championship is a high level at kind of a low barrier to entry. So deals are happening, and there's room for growth. So it's a little different, from a economics standpoint as well. So it's super exciting. And I'll tell you, I'll give you one fun fact that I learned on the women's game that was in a breakout yesterday when the EA Sports, what's it called, the FC, it used to be FIFA on the on your games, or I'm not a gamer, but the new version has only been out for like 25 days, and there's been more than 770 million people that have registered a women's team as their team on the console or the app or whatever the game's called. Yeah. So anyway, super just like, and that's unprecedented, in really any sport and game is what the executive was saying. So
yeah, and that's FC25, by the way, is the
thank you.
The rebrand on it. The other note when you talk about the league, of course, stadiums continue to be a big topic of conversation, and a big bit of news coming out of Sacramento this week, where the Sacramento City Council unanimously passed the Republic Stadium term sheet. They have a proposed 12 to 15,000 seat capacity, and this really continues to sort of plow the way. There's a 31-acre plot in the eastern portion of the Sacramento rail yards where they're going to build this thing, and that, just seeing some of the renderings, again, we in Jacksonville know all about renderings and how much stock you can necessarily put in them, but it looks like it's going to be a tremendous soccer facility that will just continue to take that particular club that has been such a great USL Championship club, Mauricio, to the next level.
Yeah, and there's a lot of history there in Sacramento from 5 years ago when they're trying to put in a bid, and it felt like they had been given the MLS bid, and then it got taken away from them for various different reasons. And then the club has been really sustained as a good product, one of the best in the league. And now they have this amazing USL Championship fan base that they're looking to, rather than look out elsewhere to promote the club, let's just make what we have better. So let's create our own home, because right now they do play in an okay facility, but it's a municipal stadium. It's got the track around it, and that's really have been their long-term plan. Now it sounds like they're trying to pivot and really create what it's already one of the best products in the league as far as on the field, but create that fan experience and invest in their fan base, which has been really good.
And just as a follow-up, the stadium itself will take up 14 of the 31 acres, and then you'd have another 17 acres featuring plans that could include commercial real estate, housing, and a hotel. That's a trend we're starting to see, Tony, around not only the USL Championship, but just around sports in general, building a stadium that also has this commercial development as part of it.
Yeah, I think the mix of use and really adds to the sustainable nature of these developments and these teams, these clubs. One thing is, the USL is really requiring it. So we're seeing the stadiums that aren't really up to a soccer specific new build sort of pro thing. We're seeing people make those plans right now, and all of the new ones are really that. The one under construction right now, obviously, is Rhode Island, but Milwaukee's planning it, Des Moines. They all have that factor, and when you have that, it's ambitious still to talk about, but I think a lot of people would agree that it's going to happen in the USL. Is this promotion relegation, and one of the things that they really want to see is consistent stadia and having really do top level pro. And if you're going to get in the USL, these things are required. So it's kind of amazing new frontier, and I'm super grateful. And all of soccer is growing. All the leagues are really advancing, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. So,
Tony, good stuff
exciting.
From Miami. We appreciate you taking a little time out of what is, I know, a busy trek for you down there. We'll let you go here. Mauricio and I have more to get into, but we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Talk
Tony.
soon.
All right. By the way, 2027 is when they're anticipating starting play in the stadium in Sacramento, which would be that is a fast build. So to get things turned around, they haven't broken ground yet. They're going to break ground at some point in 2025. So you're talking about 2 years or less in terms of the construction there. Whether it's complete is another story in terms of all the other aspects of it. But to be able to get into there in 2 years, pretty good turnaround. It's something that's going to be pretty exciting for the folks in Sacramento and around the USL Championship.
Yeah, and I think another part of what's going to happen with the change in the USL, and we're starting to see that slightly here. I think Sporting Jacks is still part of a little bit of the old regime of not regime, but just mentality of let's go claim territories before the MLS claims territories. Like, let's go announce that a team has an expansion somewhere, and you just wait to see what happens there, right? We're living that slightly a little bit, but we're part of the new era as well, and the new transition, where we actually have a plan. And even though there's certain things that cannot be public yet because there are a lot of people involved, the USL will not be announcing anything. And you've seen like it's slowed down a little bit. We used to be in a generation where like the USL was just announcing teams like a new Skittles, flavor of the month type of thing, right?
Taste the rainbow.
It's happening a little bit more. You're gonna see that move down to the USL League One, where they want to, because they're competing a little bit more with the MLS Next Pro product, and they want to claim some of those maybe secondary markets, if you would. So I still think you're gonna see some projects that are gonna be announced, and maybe won't come to fruition as fast as they would like to. But the USL Championship is starting to kind of professionalize itself in more of the business model, where you need a stadium project, you need a commercial real estate component to it in order to sustain the product on the field, right? We kind of know that the business supports the business of soccer. So the USL Championship, it's grandfathered a few projects into that scope, but less and less you're going to see a USL Championship team be announced, and then we don't know what happens for two. I mean, we have New Orleans and Des Moines. These are all announced even before Jacksonville, and there's really not a whole lot of update on those.
All right, we do want to remind you that you can check out Sporting Jacks on TV. The Sporting Jacks Report is Sunday at noon on ABC 25 here for the next couple of weeks. Then starting December 7th, we'll be back at our noon Saturday time slot before Premier League coverage on NBC. So ABC at noon on Sunday for the next couple of weeks, and then back as the Premier League gets going back again on NBC. Also, you can tune in on radio and hear Mauricio and I and Becky Burley every Tuesday at 6, the Sporting Jack Soccer Hour on 1010XL. That's on the AM side. You can listen live and on demand at 1010XL.com. We also want to remind you that our friends at All Nations Soccer will be holding their championships on Saturday, November 23rd at JU Southern Oak Stadium. The women's championship set for 4 p.m. and the men's at 7. Tickets are free, but they're asking you to reserve seats. We'll put a link in the show notes and on social media about that. But as we know, we have spent some time in and around the All Nations Soccer Organization. Wonderful organization with thousands of kids and adults now, too, who have come from families of refugees who have come to this country trying to seek some sort of peace and shelter, and they've really built a great baseline of local players who are playing at a pretty good level.
Yeah, and if you are able to come out on November 23rd at Jacksonville University to watch the final is always really well done, and it's really professionally. The league operates out of Ed Austin Field, which has its limitations on quality of field. So we know that when there's a limitation of quality of field, there's a limitation of quality of play as well. But it's impressive, the quality of the game when you put those players, especially the top two teams in the league, on a nice groomed grass field with space.
They get excited,
and all of a sudden they have a little bit more oomph to their legs, and the quality of the game is really nice. But it's a great project that our friend Josh Kimball put together several years ago with his family, and he helps immigrant families, displaced families, just do life with them and help them in the transitional period, and sometimes even find jobs and medical support, medical needs. So it's just a really good cause if you have the opportunity to participate in it.
Really cool thing. All right, let's talk about the first team picks on the USL Championship. And I just want to get your take, because you've been looking at these teams and these players, not just this season, but going back previously last season and beyond. I want to get your take on the choices and what you make of these guys. And let's start up top with the Golden Boot winner and the record goal scorer, Nick Markanek, who was an obvious choice as a first-team All-USL Championship this year.
Yeah, and to be honest, you really couldn't go wrong with Wilson Harris or Nick Markanek. They're arguably the two best forwards in the league now, in a league that's pretty packed at the top. But Nick Markanek, I mean, just historic season. We've covered how many different ways he can score goals. It's not just a one. Mm-hmm. He's not a one-trick pony. And Wilson Harris is not far from that. He just needs a little more consistency in the league. But you'll see that it's really a bit of a sweep between Charleston Battery and Louisville City. Out of the 11 players on the first team, 6 represent those two organizations on the East Coast and on the East Conference. And I'm not surprised with that. To me, the best player in the league today that really ticks all the boxes is Aaron Malloy, is a Charleston Battery center mid. It's an acquisition that they got in the offseason to go from good to better. And really, if Nick Markanic and Louisville City didn't have the marquee regular season that they had, Charleston Battery is arguably the best team in the league.
And he had that wonderful free kick to help Charleston win and advance in the postseason. And a guy, because of his position, the more you watch him, the more you're impressed, because he doesn't necessarily flash because he's not scoring a ton of goals. He's got the free kick capability, but boy, he's one of the, and this happens a lot with central midfielders. The more you watch him, the more you go, wow, he impacts the game every time he's out there.
Well, when you see what one player, especially in the nucleus of the field, as Aaron Maloney, he plays that deep line 6, but he does gravitate forward a lot. He's the one that links the game for them. So last year, and we're gonna actually on the sporting report, we're gonna break down Charleston Battery, and really the topic's gonna be the change in identity that they had. Last year, they're a bit more direct team, defensively sound, and they're still defensively sound and really well organized, but they're a possession team. They're controlling nearly. They're the only team in top 5 in every good statistic category that you can have, including in possession, passing, completion, and all that goes to plugging in Aaron Malloy in the midfield. If you don't have a player like him that is a ball retention player, then you can do that. Then you have to play a little bit more objective or direct in some cases. So to me, he not only changed the team, he's not going to show up on a stat sheet unless you kind of get a heart rate monitor and distance covered on the GPS.
Yep.
He will lead in that category as well. But the importance of one player changing the identity of a club.
The other member of Charleston Battery who made the first team was Graham Smith, a defender. Again, this is a team that goes forward a lot, and Smith doesn't mind going forward from the back line. But to have 3 players on the first 11 shows you just how good this Charleston team is.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can see the 3 players are one in the back line, one in the midfield line, and one in the forward line, right? I mean, it's really, they might as well have had the goalkeeper if Eric Dick from Pittsburgh didn't have such a good year. And then the other ones to look at, you look at Louisville, similar, Arturo Ordonez, Louisville City, great year last year. They actually they got upset and disappointed that they did not make the semifinals this year for the first time in 5 years, right? But Arturo Ordonez, he was the defensive player of the year last year. So not only they were already good last year, they went to get the best defender in the league that played for the Riverhounds last year. So it's really a well-balanced. When you put a roster together, you can't just look at one line. You can't we need the best forward and best midfield. You have to look at the entire structure.
Taylor Davila is the other one for Lou City, midfielder who earned his first-team selection for the second straight year. And 7 goals, 6 assists from central midfield position. So that's contributing to a very impressive attack and making a difference when he's out there.
Yeah, and he's a player that can unlock the game on that attacking side, as you mentioned. He can do a little bit of both in the midfield. He can arrive into the box and score those goals. He can also put players in the right position, like Wilson Harris and the rest of the forward crew. But Taylor Davila is one of those players that you're always looking for, that player that can unlock the game for you, and that's who he is. All
right, let's hit the others here quickly. Eric Dick, you mentioned, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds goalkeeper, led the league with a 0.69 goals against average, 79% save percentage, tied for the league lead with 14 shutouts, and was one of the reasons why Pittsburgh was a factor this year, despite losing a little bit of firepower.
Yeah, exactly it. I mean, the reason why, that saving percentage for goalkeepers is always an interesting stat, right? Because if your percentage is high or if you get a lot of saves, it's probably even the worst stat, the most saves in the league. That means that your defense is not very good and you're being called upon. But 14 clean sheets is pretty impressive. And that's the reason why they even they kind of stumbled into the postseason towards the end. And he's a huge reason, because when you lose the defensive player of the year and you lose the Golden Boot player of the year in the same year, that's a really difficult to. And now the fact that they kept Eric Dick, that's pretty good. And they're able to at least be competitive.
On the back line, Sacramento's Jack Gurr, a wingback who loves to go forward, really good in terms of his services in as well. 8 assists this year, a career high, and 52 chances created.
Well, Jack Gurr is a player that you want on your team. You do not want to play against him. He's just an absolute bulldog. He doesn't stop. He's like a battery bunny, and he's just a fantastic player. Simple player, but like you said, exceptional qualities. His ability to serve the ball in.
And Matt Mahoney, the other defender from Colorado Springs. And interesting, again, that the only representative from the second seed in the West for a team that certainly has a personality is on their back line.
Well, not only for Colorado Switchbacks, but also you don't see anybody from Vegas here on the first team, right? And so the two most dominant teams on the West Coast, and they weren't dominant from beginning to end like Battery and Louisville were, but towards the last 15 games of the season, I mean, Vegas and Charleston and Colorado Switchbacks have been dominant, and they are deserving of it, and they're showing it in the playoffs as well as the 1 and 2. So to only have one player, especially from the Switchbacks, because what they're really, really good at is going forward. Yeah. And so you would think that one of their attacking players would kind of break in.
All right, so a couple others to mention. Maxi Rodriguez from Detroit City in the midfield. His career season, 10 goals, 5 assists for Detroit City, with a club that was one of the storylines during the regular season. He certainly has been a difference maker for Detroit City, one of the reasons why they went from being a team kind of searching for an identity to a very clear identity this season.
Yeah, and under new leadership this year, and Maxi was used really well as one of those attacking players, once again, similar to Taylor Davila, that can unlock the game for them.
And finally, Jorge Hernandez for San Antonio. San Antonio didn't have a great season, but he was very influential. Led the league in chances created with 83, second in assists with 9, also had 31 interceptions and won 30 tackles, a success rate of 73.2. Unpacking that means if he's around the ball, he's probably going to come up with it.
He's a special player, and you're right. San Antonio didn't have a good year, but he is a player that he's different. Like, he can carry the ball, he can turn on the dime, he can shoot, he can finish, he can make the final pass. He is what we kind of call that specialist. You don't see a lot of that in the game anymore. I think the best, the best example, not to compare, is a Messi, right? Like, he's a specialist in what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one else can really replicate that. And Hernandez is exactly that.
All right, anybody who wound up on the second team or did not get mentioned who you think should have gotten a little bit of a nod here, maybe more consideration for the first team?
Yeah, actually, I think JC Nando from Las Vegas Lights, I think he is a special player. I think he's a huge reason why they were as good as they were this year in their new project. He made the second team, and I think there's a lot of argument that he was the best central midfield player in the league. So I'm surprised not to see him on the first team. 2
goals, 5 assists for him, and made a difference both going forward and also in terms of his defense as well. All right, so that's a look at the best 11, the first team and second team from the USL Championship for this season, and a little bit of insight from Mauricio on that front. Hey, remember, you can become a member of Sporting Jacks. Just go to sportingjacks.com, sign up. It's free. You can get discounts on Sporting Jacks official club merchandise, invitations to exclusive insider events, automatic chances to win special prizes and experiences. Plus, you'll receive the Sporting Jacks monthly email newsletter. Plus, you can place your deposit on season tickets and receive first access to seats and a special limited edition Sporting Jacks founding member pin. And $25 can reserve your seat for Sporting Jacks men's or women's, $40 for both. Let me just say this would be a great time to put that deposit down as we get closer to the holiday season. All right, last thing we want to get into, no Premier League this weekend with the international break, but if you were listening to this before Saturday, UNF will play for the ASUN Championship. They take on Eastern Kentucky, 7 o'clock at Hodges Stadium. It has been a terrific run here for Jamie Davies, the first-year head coach of the Ospreys. They are a win away from making it to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, a great year. They play Central Arkansas.
Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas.
But you're right. First-year head coach getting to host the final and getting a really good, clear pathway into the final. I see them as a favorite. However, their last regular season game was against Central Arkansas, and they could have claimed the regular season title, and they stumbled up on it a little bit.
6-2.
6-2, one of those freaky games. I expect this game to be a little bit tighter.
All right, that'll do it for us here on the Sporting Pod. Thanks to Tony Allegretti, and thanks to our friends at Gemstone Media. We record the Sporting Pod in the studios at Gemstone Media each and every week. For Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Sporting Pod.